Hi, I'm Lauren Kemp,
And I'm Bridget Price.
and this is Entrepreneurs in Progress. So today is all about customer service, our philosophies, how we work so hard at keeping customers happy, because we're customers ourselves. Even though we're business owners, we're customers with any other products that we consume and buy. And so we definitely try to keep customer experience in mind when it comes to our own businesses and practices. Let's get started. So, Bridget, what is your philosophy around customer service?
I used to think that the customer is always right, an avid customer, as someone who's constantly consuming. I guess I never felt entitled to a specific service or offering, but I did expect a certain level of customer service within any interaction. And I consider myself to be a very low maintenance customer. If you manage my expectations, I'm fine. I don't need you to do like this above and beyond type of stuff that some customers expect, because I also am wanting to be a great customer to whatever company or service or product that I'm purchasing or buying. Mm-hmm. So my personal philosophy as I became a business owner definitely shifted from the customer's always right to more or less like, it's in order to have great customer service, you have to start by managing their expectations. I also think that as a business owner, customer service is integral to your growth and to being successful. It's hard to have a great product or service and shitty customer service. So I think that it's something that influences your policies, your procedures, your interaction, how you engage with customers, what people say about you, your credibility. Mm-hmm. So customer service is one of those things that you have to kind of nail down or at least develop your philosophy around with your business. So my philosophy has definitely changed being a business owner, but it's not too far off. It's more or less in the same realm, just kind of a different approach to customer service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that I don't know if we have necessarily like a philosophy. One of our main values is people experience. How we approach customer service has been shaped by our own experiences being a customer and dealing with other businesses, customer service reps. So I think I've talked about this before about leading with empathy with customers or employees. So putting ourselves in the customer's shoes and thinking about all the things that we either loved or hated about any customer service experience, because you're going to fuck up. Like, it's going to happen.
You have to plan for it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's your fault.
We're human.
Yeah. We're human. It's going to happen. And like a good customer service experience can save your business a lot of headache, or it could turn people into advocates. I think it's just so important to have that empathy and think about things that you liked or hated in dealing with customer service reps. Some businesses don't care at all about customer service and they can get away with it. Yeah. But for us, we want to use it as a differentiator. That's why it's just so important to us. It impacts our business in so many different ways when it comes to referrals, reviews, add-on work. And I think you brought up a really good point about expectation setting. So I think that is so huge, because if you tell someone you're going to reply back within, 24 hours, and then it takes you a week or even a few days, you're just sitting around waiting, like, what's going on? What's happening? Why aren't you keeping me in the loop? Right. And then also if you mess up, it's having that accountability and, doing whatever you can to make the situation better. And it doesn't matter, if they're being a pain or if they're being awful. Like, you want to try to minimize the damage as much as possible. So that's our approach.
Yeah. I like how you mention the customer experience, because we don't refer to customer service for us as customer service anymore. We call it the client experience or customer experience or the customer journey, because every touch point, every interaction that your customer has with you, whether it's coming to your website, whether it's, booking a service, buying a product, scheduling, consultation, whatever the case may be, you want to make sure every part of that journey is a really great one. And that is part of customer service. It's not just how you respond to issues or escalations. It's not just how you provide, pleasantries over the phone or how you talk to a customer. It's literally about making their customer journey from start to finish one that's easy, one that is managing their expectations, and one that brings them immense value. And so that is how we approach our philosophy around, and made easy, at least, it's the client experience. And that even goes down to the actual service itself. So I feel personally, I mentioned a couple of times before, like our client experience is top notch. I mean, you're not going to find a lot of companies that put so much just stock in how we go about our client experience. I mean,
yeah, I wonder. So I want to ask why? Why do you and Marcus put so much emphasis on customer experience where maybe others do not?
I feel like we are lucky in the sense that we started a cleaning business and we've never been cleaners before. And being distanced from that, I guess, makes it easier to have a top level view. And so what I mean by that is, if I was a cleaner in my past life and I decided to spread my wings and start a small cleaning company, and I bring on a few other individuals to help me out, and I have this blossoming business, because I've been in those shoes of being a professional cleaner, I might take customer complaints or issues very personally. Or I might feel like, man, I've busted my ass for this job, and now this customer is debating me on whether or not they should pay me my full price or rate. And so what we've experienced is that a lot of people take their customers' experiences very personally instead of from a professional perspective or standpoint. And a lot of that, I think, as a new business owner, or even sometimes a seasoned business owner, you're trying to establish boundaries and you're trying to let the customer know who's boss and who's dictating what. And a lot of people, I feel like, don't like the idea of being pushed around or taken advantage of, even if it's just one customer.
Yeah.
And I think Marcus and I have, I don't know, we innately feel like it's not worth fighting one particular customer, or even a handful, when you have over 1,000 customers. And we are in, Facebook groups, and we see conversations go back and forth about, oh, this customer, basically they baited and switched me. Like they wanted a standard clean, and I come in, and it's a hoarder, and she only wants to pay me this, and she's refusing, and she's also threatening to leave a bad review. What do I do? And for Marcus and for me, it's a no-brainer. Like, just like, do what you have to do and get out, and don't look back. A lot of times, again, we see the frustration, we hear it, we feel like just how hurt they are about this experience, and they can't let it go. So I think for Marcus and me, we have the ability to, see the professional over the personal. And I think that's been super helpful for us. We also are in a business that we rely on customer reviews and feedback. And we understand the impact that a tarnished brand, has on your growth and your business. I mean, again, and you have to kind of distill it down to the money. If a customer is complaining about a couple of $100s, is that worth everything you've worked on or towards building your credible brand to have that questioned over one job? And sometimes people are not able to see the bigger picture because their emotions are tied into it.
I think that's pretty common, though. There are still times where Brian and I will feel it. I'm more so than Brian. Brian's a little more stoic about it, but like, I'll get emotional and be like, how dare they?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll take things a little personally. And that's why I you take a moment to process the feelings, and then you got to realize and separate, again, the professional from the personal, because it's not personal.
Right. It's not. It
feels personal, though, because it's your business. It's like a piece of yourself out there. So it does feel like such a personal attack, but it's not.
It's not. And again, I've worked in customer service before, so I've been on the other end. I've heard the complaints for companies that weren't mine, the issues, and I was always empathetic then because even though I worked for this large company, my rule of thumb was like, this is, one customer, let's hear what their issue is. Let's probe, let's empathize, all of those things. And the truth of the matter is 9 times out of 10, it's not really about the money, right? If customers are complaining or whatever, there is a need that someone did not meet, that the company did not meet. There was an expectation that was not managed, and customers just want to be heard. So you have to think about any time that you've made a complaint or you've had an issue with the service, what prompted you to speak out? And something there has not been addressed. And that's what they're trying to get to. Some people are more cool than others. Some people are like, whatever, I'll just chalk it up to a bad experience and move on. But sometimes it could just be the wrong damn day. Like, okay, they got me fucked up today. Like I need to tell someone about themselves. And you could, again, it's not personal. Oftentimes it's about the business itself, what the product or service was, what was failed to be delivered. And then if there wasn't an appropriate remedy for it. So.
Yeah. And I think you make a good point about how, like, if you have processes, like when I think about like customer service calls that I've been on the end on, the better processes you have and the better expectations you set, the less like angry or the less likely you'll need to have that customer service. Because if you focus on the customer journey, then I feel like you don't end up having to do as much triage or damage control, because I think one of the things I noticed recently about like, there's some customer service companies where if you call, sometimes you have to sit and wait on the phone and hear that stupid elevator music for like 1 to 2 hours. And you just have to sit there and wait. And then as soon as someone answers, you get disconnected and you're like, no, which is the worst. Yeah. But then there are some times where like very rarely they'll be like, oh, would you like us to call you back? Or you are 15th in line, or your estimated wait time is this. Like that is it's still like, even if your estimated wait time is still 40 minutes, like at least you have an idea and you're not just kind of sitting there waiting. So it's still a better experience just having those expectations and processes.
Yeah. And we have to remember as business owners, obviously, right? Like we're in business so we can sell something. And outside of the business owners themselves, there are 2 people you should care about: your employees and your customer. And without really having kind of a holistic approach to your customer service, you're always going to sell your business short. So, I think strangely enough, I think another differentiator for me and Marcus is that when we thought about our processes and policies, they were developed, 1, to advocate for our cleaners. And then 2, they were developed so the client experience can be an enjoyable one. And sometimes, based on what I hear or the feedback I get from other people in the cleaning industry or in our business, they didn't approach their business like that. They approached their business with, how much money can I make? How can I get to my margins? Sometimes they are approaching it from how can I mitigate issues and all of that. But that customer component is missing. And it's for me personally, it's crazy sometimes when I hear other people who are in the cleaning business fighting over a particular customer. Like, what do I do? Like, I'm stressed. And it's like, just take the full accountability, move on. It is not worth trying to convince an unreasonable customer that they're wrong. It's just not going to fly. So I think that is thinking about your customers is something you have to do at the very beginning of your business. And like you said, even small things like telling me how long I'm going to be put on hold, or offering to call me back, or holding my place in line, or, it sucks to be on the phone for an hour, but at least I know I can maybe multitask or do some stuff in between.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some specific things that you do in your business to ensure that you have happy customers? And I know you've touched on some of these things before, but do you have any specific examples within your processes?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think one of the biggest differences in our cleaning business is that we don't do in-home estimates, so our customers can book online. We give them the information or access to put in their information and what they're looking for. But even if they go and book online, right, one of the components we implemented early on in our business was a customer verification call. So, more likely than not, if you decide to book online, you didn't want to call in to book an appointment, right? You wanted to have the control and autonomy to just do it on your own. But the customer verification call was put in place, one, to let you know that, or let the customer know that, hey, this is a legit business, right? This is not some random small business that you tripped upon online, but we're real and we have real people. And we want to verify your information and make sure that we are going to provide the right service for you at the onset, not come in, surprise you, not tell you you have to upgrade your service, but we can manage your expectations before we even arrive. Because even though we have all of that in writing, even though it's all in the email, people don't read all the information. So we start there. We have ideally cleaners who are professional, greet the customer, do a great job. Part of that experience in terms of our cleaners that's important and the customer experience side that customers don't see is like making sure they're paid well, making sure that the cleaning teams have all the information about the customer that's necessary. One of the things I always tell our cleaning professionals is that you don't want to go into a house and ask what they're getting done. You want to confirm what they're getting done. So that way you're already letting them know that the communication channels are tight and they know what to do, and they instantly earn the customer's trust.
Is there a reason that you chose a phone call versus like texting the customer to verify?
So we go back and forth on that. So that's a great question. Phone call, because sometimes there's information that's hard to succinctly get over text. So for example, in the verification call, we might want to make sure that you know the difference between a deep clean and a standard clean. Some people might have follow-up questions and it's harder to do that over SMS. We can implement, and we've talked about like an SMS service where we just send that type of information. But what happens is that person on the other end can't respond. So it's a one-way communication channel. So it's automated to the point where we could we could set it up and send out these reminders. Hey, you have your booking coming up, or hey, in case you needed to know the differences between our services, click this link to our website. But if there's questions, they're shut off at this point.
Okay. So, I was just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a great question because we go back and forth because a lot of other companies, they rely on SMS communication because we know actually after some research, it's more effective. Like you have a higher conversion of getting in touch with someone via SMS versus phone call. But that is something we're considering, trying to figure out how to open up that channel for that verification information. Also, it's a psychology thing. So sometimes people won't tell us that they have multiple pets. So when you're talking to someone on the phone and confronted verbally, it's harder to lie or mislead someone when you're kind of not expecting them to ask that question. So there's some components there. But yeah, the biggest thing with the phone call is just making sure that they hear a real voice. They know that we have their booking and that we're going to take care of them essentially.
Okay. So say the customer has gone through all the experience, but they're upset about something. How do you deal with an upset customer?
So we have a written process, and our admin staff will listen to the problem. They'll probe for additional information. We have a process because we sell a service that technically has physical proof. So we can see if something's cleaned or not cleaned. So if they have an issue with something that was missed, then we ask them to send us photos or email us photos. But we try to get as much information, on that call or during that email or complaint. And we let them know at the onset, we're here to remedy this for you. So you don't, if you're telling us this issue or complaint, you don't ever have to be concerned or worried if you're going to be taken care of. It's just a matter of when. That's it. And what it's going to be. And we follow up really fast. So, part of that feedback loop is after a cleaning takes place, within 24 hours, one of our admin staff calls a customer, if they're a new customer, and asks them how the cleaning service went. If they're unavailable by phone, by 12 p.m. the following day, they get an email asking to rate their service. So we hit them about 2 to 3 times within a 24-hour time frame. And then we have a drip follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't respond to the email, we'll try again the next day by phone if they don't respond. And usually I would say, quite honestly, Lauren, within 72 hours, about 90% of our customers respond to the feedback, or they give us feedback. So that's great. We assume that if they don't rate us or if they don't answer our call, no rating is good type of thing. It's not great, but
means there wasn't a problem. Yeah.
Right. Now there are outliers. We've had customers who just weren't responsive at all. And then boom, a month later, they hit us with like a bad Yelp review. And we're like, but again, even if I were to go back and check, because we have notes and all of that, I can see that someone attempted to call the customer. He or she did get the feedback email and they just decided. And sometimes it's things that trigger customers. So maybe they weren't sure how they would tell us about their experience or the feedback, or they were busy or preoccupied. But then they're triggered because they're in our email marketing campaign. We got their email address now. So we're emailing them like offers the following month. And like that triggers them. They're like, oh, hell no, I don't want to. My experience with them was bad. I forgot. Let me leave a review. Yeah. And oftentimes when they go that route, it's really for, I don't want to sound condescending, but it's for attention. Like they're trying to flag us down and let us know they had an issue with the service. So,
I think it's interesting because I was coming to the realization that like when we talk about like how do we ensure happy customers, a lot of that has to do with the customer experience and the customer journey, hopefully like leading up to, the completion of the project or service, and then dealing with unhappy customers. And this makes sense, happens, after that. And so you have different processes for that. So when I think about like keeping customers happy, I think it's, you hear those, phrases like undersell and over deliver. And we don't try to do it to that extreme, but we do always try to provide more value than what we charge for in that sense. So like we do try to surprise and delight where we can. We do try and make sure that we're easy to work with. I think that's one of the things that businesses don't consider when they're thinking about the customer journey. Like, especially when it comes to consulting, like we're not going to nickel and dime people. Like we've had customers say like, oh, like I just want to jump on like a quick call with you. Like, how much is that going to cost? And we're like, nothing. Like if this is a quick call, like we are here to help you. We're not going to charge you and like by hourly. We don't charge by hourly to begin with. So, we're not going to nickel and dime you. We want you to have a good experience, and things like payment process. Like, it's nice that you have the online thing, which is super nice and easy. We use a software called PandaDoc, which allows us to send our beautiful scope of work, and then they can pay with a credit card through there. Like, I'm still blown away by like people who've made me send a fucking check. I'm like, can we be done with checks? Like, there's no reason in this day and age to be sending or requiring a check. Like, I was like, we can do a wire transfer. Girl, we can do credit card. Like
anything.
Why checks?
Just not a check. Yeah, girl. We have customers who will try to pay by check, and we're like, that is not an accepted form of payment. We're sorry, And people are obviously still. I think some people are still uncomfortable providing like credit card information over the phone or online sometimes. But I mean, that is what we do in the 21st century. Like, there's
or use a credit card processor. But like we actually accept checks. So because so like I'm so annoyed by like to do it, because I feel like there's so many easier ways, but there are some companies that are just so set in their processes, or I'm sure they have some reason for why they have to pay via check. That is
some accounting thing,
something out of our control, but we want to be easy to work with. So like I try like, the credit card's the easiest. Wire transfer is also available, but if like they have to mail us a check, they can do that, but it delays the project because we require payment up front before we start doing any work. So like letting them know like, okay, like, yes, we can do it this way, but this is how that's going to impact the start date for our project and working together. So
yeah,
managing those
I am
expectations.
curious, I've been in the business similar where it's almost like we don't refer to customers in the B2B space as customers, but clients. Mm-hmm. And for what you and Brian have been working on, how have you guys molded your client experience, or what did that look like from the beginning? How has it evolved?
Sure.
And then is there a feedback loop that you get from your clients?
A little bit. Yeah. So when we started out in the beginning, I had some agency experience at previous jobs, and Brian's, been in sales. So we came up with the customer journey or customer experience from the get-go. Like, we decided we're not going to bill hourly. We're going to do, projects. And actually, I think the main thing was setting that value, like setting the value that we're like, hey, we're going to prioritize this. And then we looked at every step of the way and like, how can we do this better? So when it came to, like I said, payment and getting started, how can we make this easy for customers to pay us, which also helps us close deals faster, which is, the added benefit. So we're like, yes. Okay, like credit card, we'll use
and
this
Lauren
software.
sees the money.
That's my favorite part. So we're like, all right, paying us and getting started is easy. We have the timeline of getting it done usually within 2 weeks. And then we're like, okay, we have everything written out. Here's what you can expect in an implementation. And then with workshops, oftentimes consultants or agencies will have a talk track. So it's usually just like people talking at you from a script, like, this is, today's workshop is on leads and contacts. And then today's workshop's on reporting and dashboards. And you just talk at a person for an hour. And that is good for scaling because you have your script and the person just follows it. But we are like, well, we want the workshops to be really valuable to people because maybe they are focused on building a campaign. Maybe they really need to understand something else within their business and get that set up. And so we have like a structure, but we still allow them to say like, hey, I want to, talk about this today, or we help them build out an email in a workshop. So it's almost a working workshop. So there's that flexibility to make sure that they get the most value out of our services. And then at the end, we don't have quite a process yet for sending like a survey. Like you can send surveys via Salesforce, and that's how we get like our reviews on the partner, app exchange. So we'll send them, to people, but then they don't always get filled out. So,
yeah. And I feel like that's more likely to happen with, that B2B space versus, a B2C.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think when something goes wrong and we mess up, like one of the things that we do is like, we're in communication, we're available. I think that's another thing is, again, like I mentioned before, we don't nickel and dime people if they need a quick call or need to help with something. Like, we're there to help, we're there to answer. I think we're pretty responsive. And so the other thing that's super important to us is accountability, within our own internal company and accountability with clients, because it goes a long way. I think, at least I respect people who take accountability when they mess up. Like we said, we're all human, take accountability, and then we try to fix the situation as quickly as possible. And then if we need to, like, try and not just fix it, but go a little bit above and beyond to like make it even better. Like, hey, we're so sorry. Like, here's what we're going to do to make it up to you. So like sometimes in the past, we've given them an extra workshop, or we've created some extra automation, or done whatever we could to turn things around. And I think it's a little different with B2B, as you mentioned, like, no one's looking for us on Yelp. Right. So I don't feel like we have the issue so much as like dealing with reviews and trying to manage that. Like, I definitely want to start capturing more customer stories, and we have a little bit of reviews on the App Exchange, as I mentioned before, but it's a little different there. So, it's not just saying, oh, we messed up, like, here's what we're going to do. It's like, this is what happened. This is why this happened in your org or whatever. It's why you're seeing this error message, or, this.
Yeah.
just trying to figure out. It's kind of funny. It's not funny, but like there have been some times where you also get like the emails where it's like, Protiv, please stop what you're doing. We're like, what? And it turns out like it wasn't anything that, it wasn't anything that we did, but explaining like this happened, like this is not us doing that. We're doing this within your org. They just know that something's changed or something's gone wrong. And like, this is probably somebody else or another team or something that's happening here. So
got it.
Dealing with stuff like that. The hard part is dealing, I think, with the customers who think everything is urgent or an emergency and like have it in that subject line that like, oh my God, the sky is falling. And because you have to drop everything that you're doing to help them. We're still trying to figure out that boundary because, we do want to be available. We want to be responsive, but we do have other clients. I think that's hard for some people to understand too, is with agencies, you're not the only client. There are other people that we have to help and, as well. And so if you have people that keep saying like the sky's falling or they need help with this, that's when you get scope creep. Yeah. That's when it starts to like stress you out. If you like, no one likes to get that email at 10 p.m., like, is it actually emergency or do you just like not know what you're doing and you need some help? Like, so I don't know. Do you come across that often where it's like fire drill, emergency, sky is falling kind of deal? So sometimes like if a customer has escalated to a point beyond where our admin staff, they've been limited because customers know that they're not the higher up. I'll handle those escalations. And I've had a couple of customers who are like, at that point, they'll just be like, I only want to talk to Bridget. And so they'll call in just for small things like a schedule change. And, I'm not above any of the work in my business. Obviously, we've joked about all the hats we wear. From HR, customer service, to marketing, to everything. But obviously we have other things that we need to prioritize. And that is why we hired admin staff to man the phones and take care of the calls and take care of the customers. So when customers are demanding to speak to me for small things like a schedule change and not even an issue at this point, I've had a handful of those. And quite frankly, I've had to just be honest with the customer and say, hey, I love talking to you. I love helping you. But just know that unfortunately, my day gets, beyond me. And you can trust our admin team, Shella and Shauna. They will take care of you. They have all of the notes, from our conversations. So not to fret, they will make sure to take care of you. And sometimes it's hard. They'll say, oh, I just enjoy, working with you or, so on and so forth. And great. That's all good and well, but we have to follow these processes or else it doesn't work. Other people will be able to, slip through the cracks and now things are just kind of running haywire. And that's what we try to avoid. Most people don't do this to us and abuse that. No. that not that power, but I feel like most people want to be a good partner, want to work with you. And usually we've weeded out the red flag clients and those are the ones that are most likely to do that. So most people are wonderful to work with, even if they are anxious. I tell her, I feel lucky, even though we're in this B2C space and we are doing a service like cleaning, we have really great customers. I mean, they're reasonable, they're fair, they're understanding. You're always going to have, depending on how wide a net you cast and how many people you're servicing, you're always going to have a few that, kind of give you a hard time. And that is the whole point of, building a customer service or client experience policy or process so you can appropriately deal with those individuals. And I feel like there's always a chunk of that customer service experience that's just reserved for the escalations, right? Like you build everything in mind to avoid the escalations and just to make sure the customer walks away feeling great about the experience with you. But then there's that part that's always going to be reserved for how to deal with escalated customers. But quite honestly, given the nature of our business, we don't come across that a lot. And people are very, very reasonable is what I've learned. So I do want to touch on that accountability aspect. I think we've talked about this before.
as business owners, Marcus and I just feel responsible for everything. So even though sometimes we feel the weight of something going wrong, or maybe even seeing how maybe someone misunderstood a process or policy, or they didn't follow instructions or something of that sort, ultimately it always falls back on us. Mm-hmm. If things are repetitive or mistakes keep happening, that means something we're doing is not correct. And I think that business owners should always have that mentality, because when you're taking accountability for things, you're going to be quick to fix them, or you're going to be quick to get to the root of the problems instead of thinking it's everyone else. You mm-hmm. have to, as a business owner, be willing to accept that you are the problem and you have to fix it. And it's not necessarily saying that in a bad way or negative way. It's just, it's your business. So anything that isn't operating correctly, it falls on you.
I'm not sure that everybody has that viewpoint, because there's that ego blow of blaming yourself. But I agree with you. Brian and I, believe in that, like, extreme ownership and accountability, because every single decision in the business, it doesn't matter if someone messed up. You're the one who hired that person, or you're the one who didn't write a clear enough process, or the mm-hmm. process itself is flawed. The success or failure of your business is, dependent on you. And I mean, even, I think I've said this before too, like, the success is usually like a team effort, but the failure, is on you.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think one thing that has worked in our favor is just being willing to own that, even with our teams mm-hmm. and with our cleaning professionals. Like, hey, we hear you guys. This is something that we've decided to fix or modify. And then also taking that accountability with the customer too. I don't care if a customer, or if a cleaning team is late, or for whatever reason, the customer doesn't care, right? They only care about how you take accountability to fix it.
I think it's also kind of like a mindset to go in, and with customer service or with anything going on in your business, when something goes wrong, the first thought Brian and I have is like, okay, what are we doing wrong? And we try to figure out, what did we do wrong that ended up with this result? We try to figure out if it's something we did first versus blaming something else. Right. Like, what did we do wrong? Right. What could we do to prepare or prevent or do, differently in the future to get a different outcome? And sometimes it ends up like, okay, like, this is just going to happen. Sometimes, people make mistakes. Sometimes there are people who will always be unhappy with mm-hmm. whatever you do for them. Yeah. So, but I think it's starting from that place of, okay, where did we go wrong? What can we do better? And then, if it ends up being like, okay, there's nothing we can do, which usually isn't the case, but I think that's the way to kind of approach customer service. And the other mindset is just being like, how can we make this a better experience for them? What are the first things you're thinking of when you're thinking of your business and processes? Because you can create a bunch of things to optimize for revenue, for efficiency, mm-hmm. but are you asking, with every process you're putting in place, how does this affect the customer? How does this mm-hmm. impact the customer journey? I think that is how you end up having a customer service or customer experience first. Yeah.
You asked earlier why Marcus and I approach customer service differently from others, and why I believe, no one can really come close to us in our industry with regard to our client experience. And I honestly think a lot of that has to do with our corporate experiences too. And when you work corporate, you do consciously and subconsciously develop a certain level of business acumen that you probably wouldn't have if you were maybe doing any other type of work, whether it's trade work or mm-hmm. working for yourself. And so when we are in those groups and we see a lot of those other cleaning companies, again, take customer complaints or issues so personally, I think they haven't reached a certain level of business acumen that's required to really shape your customer service experience in a way that will always put them first and you last. And in that sense, what I mean is that the customer service experience is one that just can't be compromised, no matter how you feel about what's going on, or if you did everything right, or if this customer is being unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes, people ultimately learn through experiences. And then you have some business owners who are really hard-headed and stubborn, and they stand by their product, they stand by their service, they stand by choosing not to feel ripped off. And I think at that point, sometimes you have individuals who just are refusing to hear one another. You have a customer who's upset and unhappy, and you have a business owner or a professional who feels like they can't sacrifice any lost earnings, whatever the situation is. And so I think that just takes a certain level of business know-how and acumen that some people acquire a little bit too late, unfortunately.
I'm not so sure that it's necessarily acumen, because I feel like you can learn all this stuff and understand it. And this is like the emotional side is a very human response. But I do wonder if it's a fixed mindset, because if you're not open, if you're not self-aware, if you're not, observing the experiences around you and things that are happening, like if you're a fixed mindset, you're like, this is not my fault, you're being unreasonable. And I feel like with an open or growth mindset, that's where you're like, okay, what went wrong in this? How can we do something better? Versus standing your ground, which, it is so personal. But I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a big thing, big takeaways. You need to separate your personal and professional, even if you feel it personally, like how you respond. Don't respond, with emotion. Don't respond like it's super personal. I think thinking of the bigger picture is what helps me in particular, because Brian will be like, Lauren, think of the bigger picture. Like, this one unreasonable person is not worth the headache, the hassle, the potential negative impact on the business as a whole.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. What business do you know just is thriving and super successful, wildly successful with shitty customer service? I can't think of any.
Yeah. Like those talks.
I mean, those are like
companies.
The telecommunications game is a monopoly, and that's a whole different conversation.
They're doing all right, and they have the shittiest of customer service.
They have poor customer service, but they are monopolizing the whole
different situation. But that's a great point.
Ultimately, companies will be brought down, to their knees with enough negative reviews or feedback. We've seen it with small businesses. We've seen companies essentially have to start over. Like if they have too many bad Yelp reviews or Google reviews, they have to scratch everything and have a new business name and everything. And it's just, to me, it's not worth a tarnished brand for a particular customer to stand your ground on this one issue. Because also you have to think about all the other times you conceded, right? All the other times you conceded. And let's say, for example, today is just that breaking point and you're like, no, I'm tired of being a pushover. Today is the day that I'm not going to give this customer a refund or do XYZ. And it's like, really? Like, why today? When really the big thing that you mentioned is that you should just have this customer walk away feeling like, okay, their issue was addressed. And then at that point, go back and revisit your policies and procedures so no other customers can do the same to you again, or the situation is handled a bit differently. So definitely have to look at the bigger picture. Definitely have to take a step back. So again, I don't fault business owners for taking things personally. I get it. We've just been able to kind of draw that line, but you put so much work, blood, sweat, and tears into your business. It definitely can feel personal at times. So if you are instantly feeling like an adverse reaction to a customer issue, a complaint, I just think, okay, I hear what you're saying. Let me take some time. I'll follow up with you in an hour or two. Take some time to get away versus immediately responding, because 9 times out of 10, anytime where I felt like I wanted to push back on a customer, if I gave myself 10, 20 minutes, my mind has completely changed. So it's natural to kind of have those involuntary reactions to some things, but I taking some time to reflect is always better than immediately responding if it's not going to be in the best interest of you or the customer.
Yeah. And I think also, like you said, having a process around it, It's like, even if you're feeling emotional about it, you're like, well, this is the process. Like, this is what we agreed upon. This is how we're going to handle these situations. Just follow the process, follow the protocol.
Yeah. And again, 9 times out of 10 customers are actually reasonable. Sometimes they need to vent. Sometimes they need to bitch. Sometimes they want to just be heard. And then once you hear them out and then lay out their options for them, which is typically following a process, they are reasonable and they feel better. Sometimes they even feel bad for lashing out at you because they recognize that you're not necessarily at fault for what's going on. And they just decided to pick on you today. And it's not fair. I do believe customer service is evolving to a space where, again, customers aren't always right, but customers also need to recognize and also be challenged when they're being unreasonable. I think you can build processes around that too. For example, like, again, part of our process with our teams, I'll just give an example that helps mitigate unreasonable customers. We go to a house that's like a hoarder situation. Boom. Our team is sending pictures. We have it documented. So if a customer goes and complains and says, oh my gosh, they came to my house, they didn't even clean, they just left, or whatever they would say, we can combat that and be like, yeah, this is a toxic situation. We do not have the resources to clean something like this, and we can fight back and be empowered in that way. So I think a lot of companies should look for ways to empower themselves for those types of customers, should that happen or should that come about. But I think customers need to be educated on a lot of things. And I think the key to that education piece, you also touched on this earlier, is transparency. So sometimes when shit is going left, or sometimes when shit is crazy, which I think a lot of businesses experienced in this pandemic, and they are still experiencing it, they're short-staffed, they're dealing with scheduling pains, or dealing with supply chain issues. Like, being transparent with your customers will buy you more forgiveness than not. And really just being honest with them. I can't stress how far that can get you and how far that can go. When we experienced being short-staffed last year, that was one of the first things we led with, and customers got it, and they felt for us, and they wanted to still be loyal and still stick around. And before the pandemic, saying a customer or saying a cleaner is unavailable or sick or something, it's just something we wouldn't really say. Like, we didn't feel comfortable saying that because we have to work around the customer schedule. They work with us. Like, they make themselves available to us. So calling them same day saying, oh yeah, so-and-so is not available, we just didn't like doing that. So, but the pandemic opened up, a new arena essentially where this transparency can really just be a key component to your customer service experience.
Yeah. I agree. I think the times that, like, when I've been a customer and, getting rescheduled on sucks, it's inconvenient and it's annoying, but, them going the extra mile to say, sorry, this person had a family emergency, or, we're short staffed, or even giving just like that little bit of extra information. I don't know. It just makes me feel a little bit better. Like, oh, okay, like, something obviously is happening here. It's not just because, they just,
right.
It's
they
better
just
than just being like,
or...
yeah, exactly. It's unprofessional and just being like, we're rescheduling, like saying sorry for the inconvenience goes a long way.
Apologizing, man. Like,
things.
Just say you're sorry and just own it. And
I think it's that acknowledging that you have inconvenience or you have upset your customer.
Yeah. That goes really far. I mean, yeah. Again, sometimes they just want to be heard. That's what they're looking for.
Sometimes, like, we do have, like I said, the majority of our clients are awesome. They're great to partner with and work with. Sometimes the red flag clients slip in, and even then we still treat them as we would any other client. And sometimes you just know they're never going to be happy, and they're just not like satisfied or getting it. And so how we kind of deal with that is we don't work with them again, like if,
right.
Like, just make them happy as best as you can, and just don't continue to work with them, and like,
have you guys
refer
had
them
any
to someone else.
Have you had any of those clients come back?
There may have been one time where I was like, Brian, why? I thought we agreed that we were done working with, X person or client, but he thought it was
Uh-oh.
fine or whatever. I don't know. I think I'd have to ask him on like, why? And he
Right,
he even
right.
knew. He's like, Lauren, you got to send this quote out to someone. He's like, he knew what my response was going to be because I texted him back like, why? Thought we were done.
Right.
And I think they were fine the second time around. I'm not sure. Because again, something I'll have to talk with Brian and I may have to edit out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so usually
we've had customers who we said we aren't going to service come back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, eventually they do go away for good. But yeah, we've had the same situation. You know, we talk about customer service as business owners and some of the policies and processes and just our general ideologies around executing great customer service. But what does that look like at the employee level? So for you and Brian, you know, how does your employee incorporate, you know, some of the ideas that you guys have around customer service, and how do they embody that in their work?
Yeah, so some of it is empowering them, being like, hey, this is how we do things. Like if they want a 15-minute call, then yeah, take it. And we build it in. So like we have our metrics to measure, like this is how many meetings you need to have per week, but we make sure that there's enough, you know, time in their day to do admin work, to jump on quick calls and stuff like that. So like we set it up. So yes, there are these metrics that we expect you to hit, but there's also this level of customer service that we expect you to provide to our clients as well. So it's, you know, some of it is just kind of teaching. Like if a client wants to spend another workshop covering the same material that they did the last time, instead of saying like, oh, we already covered that. It's like, oh, okay, like we can do that. What, you know, do you need more help understanding? Or I recommend we cover this, but we're totally fine if you want to, you know, cover that.
Right.
Because saying like, oh, we already covered that, that's not a great experience for the client. And that puts them on the defensive. And they knew as soon as they said that, they're like, oh, and the client like went off. We're like, okay, like not doing that again. Some of it is just a learning process. And we're pretty lucky in that most of the like people we work with small businesses. So they're understanding, or they're usually not a pain to work with because we've like weeded out the red flag clients in the sales process. So we spend so much focus on the customer journey and experience that we don't have a ton of customer service processes in place right now. We definitely need to work on that a little bit more, but it's, yeah, like it's kind of on a case by case basis, just fixing the situation as quickly as possible, being responsive, being communicative. It's just, I don't know, being easy to work with. I think we try to like instill our values into our employees and try to empower them to do similarly with their clients.
Yeah, that's a great point. Almost like showing or leading by example, and, you know, making sure your employee understands the purpose of that and feels, like you said, empowered to operate the same way.
And we're so small. Like that's another thing. Like we don't have a high volume at any given moment. We can kind of get away with not having those like strict processes, or like we don't need the playbook of responses for when someone says this, you say that, you know. Right. So I think that will obviously change as we grow our business, and we do want to, you know, build out those processes a bit more and write them down. But like I said, we're so small right now, we've kind of gotten away with just leading by example and learning on a case by case basis.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. In our interview process for our professional cleaners, we have customer service based questions because I do believe great customer service can be taught. However, you want to make sure that people embody kind of an innate or inherent response to customer service and how to treat people.
Sure.
And so we look for those signs, and those are red flags for professional cleaners. If, you know, we pose a question like, customer complains about an area that you missed, how would you go about handling it? You know, if their responses don't fall in line with, I'll go back to address it, you know, I will apologize and make it right, I'll offer a partial refund if I can't go. If they don't fall in that realm, typically we know that they don't have the basic understanding of customer service and that experience and why that's important for this position. Also, a red flag that some people may not realize is a red flag response is saying like, I've never had that happen to me. I've never, we make mistakes. We fuck up from time to time, and you're always given an opportunity more times than not to fix it. And if you're telling us that that's never happened to you, that's a red flag. So
even if you can't think of a business setting, like you can come up with a personal example, like you can come up with a example. That's just poor interviewing if you're like, I don't have an example. Yeah. It's like, ooh.
And we don't believe them, right? We know that there is. They just haven't either, again, it could be poor interviewing skills. They aren't used to those types of questions, things like that. So we have other questions that supplement that. But that's usually a red flag for us. But on the employee side or the staff side, what we try to do is develop processes and policies that show our cleaners that we advocate for them. So, if there's a customer issue or escalation, we want to make sure that you're protected as well, right? Mm-hmm. And we follow these steps so you can earn as much money as possible, so you don't lose any money, so it doesn't impact your internal rating, that type of thing. And if you don't have happy employees or staff members, it's going to be hard for them to make customers happy as well. So for us, that starts with the employee experience from start to finish too, making sure they feel adequately supported. They earn 100% of their tips. We don't touch their tips at all. We try to keep them with regular customers, that people have requested them, that type of thing. So we try to make sure that they are in a position to provide great customer service or a great client experience. And it starts with meeting their needs first. So
I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's what companies fail to do sometimes, is sometimes they get so focused on the customer that they forget that their employees are an integral part of that. And they have to also essentially have a client experience or customer service for them.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about the employee experience in another episode.
Yeah. Well, that one's always evolving. I mean, I have some thoughts on that.
But so I guess I kind of like ending our episodes with, what's your main takeaway from this discussion? Yeah,
I would say my main takeaway is that whenever you're thinking about your business or how you approach servicing your customers, your clients, you have to figure out how to map out that customer journey experience. And it's from start to finish. It's not just how you respond to issues, but what you do to prevent issues. Mm-hmm. And then what you do to keep customers coming back. I think the feedback loop is one of the most integral pieces to that. And if you don't have a feedback loop, then I think that's something that you should implement right away, because you want to know what your customers say about you or how they feel about you before they tell anyone else. And you want to essentially control that experience as much as possible.
Yeah, I would definitely say the big takeaways for me were, focusing on the customer journey has been really beneficial for us. And again, preventing problems before they arise and then addressing them as well. And then the other thing for me is just accountability and putting the customers first and just taking accountability for what went wrong. And that's how you figure out how to make the experience better. At least that's how we figure out how to make the experience better. You do whatever you want. But this is what we do.
One last thing I'll end on is that, I think we are moving away from the customer's always right. But the customer always has a reason or they have a need, and it's your job to appeal to that reason and, service their need. And so I think that's one way we can shift this idea that the customer is always right, but more or less managing their expectations and really getting to the reason for why they're an advocate or why, they're a detractor. So just tap into that.
Nice. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Feel free to like, share, subscribe. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You can connect with me or Bridget on LinkedIn. And that's all. That's all for today. Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah. Thanks, Lauren.